What's up, internet? Welcome to Mo's Garage. So as you guys just saw in the intro, it sounds like the Xterra has an exhaust leak, and today I'm going to see if I can fix that with some JB Weld muffler cement. Alright guys, so before we get started, I do want to mention that I'm actually not very confident in this muffler cement from JB Weld, and that's because this only resists temperatures up to 850 degrees, and the exhaust leak is actually coming from a crack on the catalytic converter. Now I know you're probably thinking, hey Mo, what are you doing? Just replace the catalytic converter. Honestly, I really don't want to do that. I've already replaced the catalytic converters before, pretty much as soon as I got the truck. So for now, I'm just going to use this JB Weld as a temporary solution. Right now I need the Xterra to pass emissions, and then once I pass the emissions, I may consider replacing both of the front catalytic converters, but that will most likely not happen for a while. Now before I show you the crack on the catalytic converter and we apply this muffler cement, I'm going to show you guys the process that I took in finding that exhaust leak. Alright guys, so checking for exhaust leaks is actually not too difficult. First thing you want to do is you want to grab a shop vac like this, and you want to take off the hose from the inlet portion, and you want to stick that on the back side. That way there's air blowing out instead of getting sucked in. And then we're going to take this hose and we're going to stick it into the exhaust. Now before we do that, I am going to wrap it around with a shop vac just to kind of take up some space between the hose and the exhaust pipe. Then we can go ahead and stick this bad boy in. Alright, and so basically you want to end up with something like this where the shop vac is inside the exhaust. And as you can see right here, we have that shop rag just kind of wrapped around the hose. That way it takes up some space between the hose and the exhaust. Now, just as an extra precaution, I am going to stick some duct tape around the vacuum hose and then around the exhaust. And this is just so that way when we turn on the vacuum, it doesn't just get blown out. You don't need a lot, you just need enough for it to kind of hang in there. Alright, and so now we're going to go ahead and turn on the shop vac, and then we're going to go through all the exhaust unions, and we're going to spray them with some soapy water to see if there's any exhaust leaks. Alright guys, so I'm over here on the driver's side. I'm going to focus on this side area first, just because I know that this is where the exhaust leak sound was coming from, or at least that's where it was strongest. So I'm going to go ahead and check all of these unions. And it looks like right now there's nothing out of the ordinary, so I'm going to go ahead and go up the top. This is where the first catalytic converter meets the second one. So let's go ahead and spray this down. Alright, and as you can see, there's definitely an exhaust leak here. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and check where the catalytic converter meets the exhaust manifold. Alright, so it looks like I'm getting some bubbles around the O2 sensor, so I'm not sure if I just need to tighten that guy up or... Alright guys, so I think I found the biggest culprit. I'm not sure how well you guys can see, but it looks like the catalytic converter has a crack on top of it right by where the oxygen sensor is, or the air fuel ratio sensor is. So we got to figure out a way to repair that. Okay, so I've gone through the entire exhaust system, and really the only leaks I have is that big one by the O2 sensor, and then the small one between the second and the first catalytic converter. I think I'm going to skip on that one. I don't think that's a big enough exhaust leak for me to actually do anything with it. At least I hope so. So I'm going to focus all my attention over here, and once we get this one fixed up, I'm going to see if we can get away with leaving that other one. But for now, what we got to do is we got to clean the area where that crack is, and then we can start applying that JB Weld. According to the instructions, you do have to clean it. I'm going to be using some simple green, and then I'm going to wipe it down with some brake clean. Alright guys, so it's time to apply the JB Weld. If we look back in the instructions, we need to apply this liberally, and we got to let it sit for 2 to 4 hours to make sure that it is cured. And we can test to see if it's cured. If we're unable to penetrate and the repair is complete, you can use a heat gun or a hairdryer to kind of help expedite the process. But overall, you have to let it sit for 24 hours before you actually use this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let it sit for 24 hours, and then we can go for a test drive. So let me get some gloves on. I'm going to set you guys up, and then we'll go ahead and start applying this. Alright guys, so I added a bunch of JB Weld to the catalytic converter, and as you can see right here, I zip tied my heat gun to a tripod, just pointed over to the JB Weld. And basically what I'm trying to do here is expedite the curing process. I'm going to wait about 2 hours and I'm going to check and see if that JB Weld is solid. If it is solid, I'm going to check one more time with the vacuum to see if there's any other potential leaks that I may have missed, and then we can go from there. So I'll see you guys in about 2 hours. Wish me luck. Alright guys, so this is the final result after 2 hours. Let's go ahead and check and see if I can stick my fingernail into this. Make sure that you've given this enough time to cool down before you try it. Alright, so I tried to indent my fingernail in there and I couldn't. So I'm going to go ahead and use the vacuum to see if I can feel any additional leaks. I'm not sure if I mentioned this correctly previously, but this catalytic converter was aftermarket. Back before I had my YouTube channel, I took the Xterra to an exhaust shop to have the catalytic converters replaced. And these are the catalytic converters that they recommended. And I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a weld going up and down and around the air-fuel ratio sensor. And it looks like that's where the exhaust leak was coming from. Basically that weld was failing. So let me go ahead and turn the vacuum on and I'll feel for any additional exhaust leaks, and then we can go from there. All right, so I don't feel anything from this side of the catalytic converter and nothing from the other side, so I think we covered the crack well enough with the muffler cement. I can still feel some air coming from the union between the first and the second catalytic converter, but it's not a whole lot. Hopefully I won't have to do anything with it this time. Alright guys, so at this point it's been over 24 hours since I've let the muffler cement cure, so I think now's the time to go ahead and start the engine and see how the exhaust noise is compared to how it was before. Don't forget to take the vacuum out of the tailpipe. And here goes nothing. Alright guys, so it looks like the muffler cement was a success. It definitely sounds a whole lot better than it did before. So just so you can remember, here's the before. And here's the after. Now, just as a reminder, I don't believe this is going to be a permanent fix. I am just trying to get by with passing emissions. So hopefully we can pass emissions now and get this thing back on the road. So I'm going to go ahead and put this thing back together, and I'll see you guys after. Alright guys, so we have some good news and some bad news. The good news is the Xterra was able to pass emissions. As soon as I got that thing put back together, I quickly took it to my nearest emissions testing facility and we were able to pass. The bad news, however, is that the exhaust leak is back. Right after I took it to the emissions testing, I did do a 200-mile round-trip road trip, and by the time I got home, the exhaust leak was actually a lot worse than it was originally. I don't know that the JB Weld failed. It is possible that by me fixing the exhaust leak, it did make the exhaust leak between the two catalytic converters a lot worse, or maybe it just made it worse and the JB Weld also failed. That is also a possibility. I'm not quite sure yet. I haven't looked at the Xterra yet. So in the end, the JB Weld muffler cement is pretty decent. I do recommend it if you need it in a pinch. Maybe just don't put it on something so hot like a catalytic converter. Maybe something further down the exhaust system, like closer to the tailpipe. But anyways, I will definitely be taking the catalytic converters apart and replacing all the gaskets to make sure that there's no leaks. So stay tuned for that video. Now with all that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.